I was the troublemaker in school. You know, there was always that one kid in class who never took any lessons seriously, who vandalized the classroom whenever the teacher wasn't there, who talked nonstop. Despite the teacher's constant empty threats, that was me. I was very familiar with the principal by third grade, whom I visit an average of 9 times per school week. My grades were low, as to be expected. Back then, I didn't care. When I say back then, I'm referring to my elementary school years, which was from 1997 to 2000, which is also where my story begins. I remember my third grade teacher, Miss Darvin, who had recently suffered a divorce, and I took advantage of her at any moment I could. I would fail a test and she would always give me sympathy points. I would throw an eraser at one of the girls and I would be dismissed with a soft, "Stop, please." I recall with disdain my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Garnett, who would lower my grade by 10% every time I answered a question incorrectly in class. And then there was Miss Valerie, my fifth grade teacher. Miss Valerie was different from all of the other teachers. Whereas everyone else saw me as a lost cause, she would look upon me with favor and affection. She would meet with me after class and review the material with me until she had made sure I understood it. She tutored me on weekends. She motivated me to actually get work done. As you probably already guessed, my parents were rarely there for me, and she quickly became a mother figure. I just wish I'd shown it. If anything, I was a worse student to Valerie than I was to Darvin or Garrett. I needed attention more than anything. And I think that deep down, she knew about it. Even as I talked out loud to my colleague during class, even if I refused to turn in my assignments. Even as I took 15-minute bathroom trips every day. I always felt guilty every time she reluctantly sent me down to the principal's office for detention, even though I wasn't conscious of it. Then, all of that changed. I think that most of you know what I'm talking about when I say that I especially hated those 20-year-old educational films. You know, the healthy eating and the drug prevention campaigns that the school dropped on us for 1 month out of the year. Remember DARE? Yeah, that stuff. And the anti-bullying campaign. Jesus, that was torture. We spent the entirety of Fridays learning about how to stand up to bullies, how to not be a bully, how to speak up when you're a bystander. Of course, I never paid any attention to it. They all consist of grainy, low-quality scenes of people who were clearly on antidepressants talking about the problems of bullies in school. They all had cheesy titles too. Don't stand by for bullying. Take bullying by the horns. I fell asleep during each and every one of them. I clearly remember that one March afternoon where Miss Valerie showed us a video simply entitled "The Zebra." She inserted the tape into the VCR and told us that we should pay attention because the message was very important. She dimmed the lights and flipped on the TV. I wasn't awake for most of it, but what I did see was a bit confusing. It started with a cartoon scene of Africa, with no title sequence or anything. A poorly drawn zebra moved into view, coming across a pack of lions, encircling an antelope. That's all I saw before I rolled my eyes, leaned back into my chair, and fell asleep. I was awakened by the voice of Valerie saying, "And that's why you shouldn't be a zebra. Any questions?" No one had any, but from what I heard at lunch that day, nobody fully understood it. Apparently, the zebra was supposed to represent as a bystander, the lions were the bullies, and the antelope was the victim. The plot was that the zebra watched as the lions devoured the antelope and didn't speak up to stop it. I couldn't have cared less about the message, but as the days went on, I became worried. Kids were dancing around the hall singing happily, "We're not zebras, we're not zebras." When I threw erasers at the girls, they didn't react. It would hit their faces and bounce off with a slap, but they just remained unflinching, still singing "We're not zebras" happily. It was strange, to say the least. Before I left school, I met with Valerie for the usual review session. As I sat down in front of her desk, she asked me why I hadn't been watching the film. My answer was standard. I didn't care. Upon hearing this, she sighed heavily. "You know, Luke," she said, "I was once a lot like you. I would constantly cause trouble in class and would even bully other students. That was when it wasn't criminal to be one, I thought. I often picked on this one very emotional, fragile little girl. I said the meanest things to her, awful things. I laughed as I watched her cry. She even stayed home for weeks at a time. One day, I got a call that the student I had been harassing had killed herself by jumping from the window. I was too young to understand the gravity of this admission. That moment made me realize that the path I'd chosen was wrong and hurtful. I found out later that she had left me a gift. This video. She held up a copy of The Zebra. I never understood why, but I kept it knowing that changing would make her proud. And I say the same to you today. She put away the tape and looked into my eyes. Now go. She hadn't assigned anything to the class that day, and I assumed she would give me at least one extra credit paper. You're not giving me any homework? I questioned. No, you can go home. I just wanted to tell you how I feel about your potential future, she said. I shrugged and left, seriously confused at the day's events. The next day, when I came to school, the entire class was empty. I sat down in my usual desk at the front of the room, looking at the absent desks around me. Seeing that nobody was there, I stood up and turned on the TV Valerie had kept for the PSA videos. The default channel was the local news. Breaking news: 17 children dead. Cause unknown. I stared at the screen intentionally, not quite knowing what to think. 17 children were found dead this morning, all outside of their own homes, said a reporter. The deaths were discovered by a paper boy who insisted on remaining anonymous, who claimed that he found several of them dead, lying on the ground below open windows on his morning route. Never before since the town was founded has there been such a tragic occurrence. The deaths were likely coordinated, although whether the intentions were homicide or suicide is still unknown. Police are currently investigating the incident. Shocked, I stood up and turned around to find Miss Valerie standing in the doorway. "You see why it's so important not to be a zebra now?" she said, grinning. "Of course you don't." She walked towards me. "You are special." She strolled over to her desk and took out the zebra. "These children have all stood up to the lions, and in doing so, they are no longer zebras. The antelope can be saved." She handed me the tape. I grasped it with both hands, as if it was made of glass. Despite being left in the cold metal drawer, it felt warm, as if it had been lying on top of a heater. There was something else strange about it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "The antelope was killed long ago by the lion. The zebras never batted an eye. But now, both the lion and the zebras have a chance to redeem themselves. The antelope, she chose me to spread the message on this video. Only a lion possesses enough strength to pursue the horde of zebras. Now, it's your turn." Before I could speak, Miss Valerie unsheathed a knife from her pocket and swiped it across her throat, falling over her desk in a heap. I never screamed as hard as I did that day. Within minutes, the police stormed into the classroom looking for Miss Valerie. They found me crying next to her lifeless body, still clutching the tape. I couldn't understand what was happening. I still don't fully understand, if I'm honest. They told me she was a bad person and that she was very sad. But as they confiscated the tape, I overheard them saying unknown cultures killed all 17, convinced somehow. And they calmed me down. I remember handing them the tape, saying that I wanted it back after they were done with it. Apparently, that's not how it actually happened. An officer later told me that they had to pry it from me, and that I kept repeating one phrase over and over. "I want to be a zebra." The case was concluded in late 2005, with the deaths confirmed as a mass suicide, induced by Miss Valerie, who had a history of killing entire classes of children. Following its closure, the tape was returned to my possession, with the police officer's claim that it contained nothing but an eventual interest. I knew that something about what was on it caused the deaths of my classmates. I had my theories: brainwashing, hypnosis, subliminal messaging, but I kept them to myself. I don't know why. I remember me taking it from them, feeling its familiar warmth, as if I was holding hands with an old friend, but I could never bring myself to rewatch it. There was something about it, something wrong. My therapist told me it was simply a connection to the traumatic event. I stopped going to his appointments years ago. At some point, I threw the tape into a desk drawer and it gathered dust there for 12 years. Until yesterday, March 25th, the anniversary. I was spring cleaning and I tipped over the desk and there it was. I was tempted to pick it up and throw it into the furnace, but I restrained myself. I slowly leaned over and lifted off the floor, brushing it off. I expected the label to be faded or worn, but it was eerily pristine. not so much as a tear or cyst. I could still see the words printed on it, appearing as if though they were new. Studio 58 Productions presents The Zebra, an anti-bullying educational film. And then I realized something. That one thing I could never place was when Miss Valerie had first given me the cassette. That one thing that I had deterred me from watching it one more time. It was light. Too light for a cassette. The tape did not have, nor had it ever had, any film.